Uh, says I'm live. Says I'm live. Yeah, I really hope I'm live.
It says live
We shall
recording up
see.
there. So I think
Yeah.
it might be. I
For
could,
some reason. Oh
I can
yeah,
check it.
yeah. It's working. I checked it. It wasn't working. I went back to the tab. It then started working. We're all good, people. We're all good.
Awesome.
So I want to make a YouTube video about starting a YouTube channel. And I guess it would be
Oh,
the
nice.
same for anything that you start. It's like no matter how good your first book is that you
Yeah.
publish, like you've you've got up until you're like, I'm ready, I feel ready. Like no matter what it is, I kind of almost guarantee your next book is going to be better. Your 10th book is going to be way better. So like no matter what, like you're still going to look back at your first book and be like, oh, like, it's not that good.
Well, see,
You
see,
know?
I guess I think we have to be careful about it a little bit. I think that you become a professional at a certain point, and it's like this: like your first drawing that you made when you were 13 years old is probably not going to be great. I mean, maybe there are some prodigies. In fact, I know that there are some prodigies out there who just have that skill that it's just great when they first do it. But most people need to work up a skill. But I think that we need to be careful about the idea that we're going to say, oh, my best days are always ahead. I think that we should sometimes like enjoy the process as well. Like, say, I love working on this book. I'm deeply passionate about this book. And, my next book may be better. It may be, the same. It may be worse. Like, we should allow ourselves the flexibility to just,
Go
be
up and
good
down,
and be
yeah.
bad and be good and be bad. And then also, but just hoping that we're on an upward trajectory with it. Now, because I think that it's a lot of pressure to say I need to write something better than my last book.
So good.
However, experience naturally gives you skill. So there'll be a curve, So the curve will be you write your first book, it's probably not good because you're like the 13-year-old, the average 13-year-old. I know that there are some prodigies out there who picks up a paintbrush for the first time and throws a paint in it. It's like, well, actually, what happens is, and what happened with me with my first novel is you throw the paint at you and you're like, that is brilliant. I did a brilliant thing. And then you set it down for 6 months and you go back to it. You're like, what was I thinking? It is terrible.
Yes.
So yeah,
Yes. Sometimes it doesn't even need 6 months. All it
right.
needs
You
is
just
like
you look at
a
it with
good
a new
night's
set of
sleep.
eyes. Yeah.
And you're like,
So, but as you start to get the skill and you start to create the skills in your toolbox of, like, for example, the technical aspects of saying, okay, I should take out filter words from my sentence. I should streamline things, say more with
yeah.
less. Like, how can I make this more evocative? By practicing those things become more natural to you, and that's why, at least in the beginning, you see that you have progress made where you get better rapidly. So each book might be better. So my first book, I didn't publish it. My second book, I felt was I really felt passionately like this is a good book, people will enjoy it. And then from there, like, I just need to hone my craft. That's it.
Yeah.
But I think Mortal Tether will always be special to me because it was the first book that I published, and that's a scary thing, because it's like, what are people gonna think?
Oh, yeah.
But I was terrified actually when I put out Moral Tether for two reasons. One, I was scared for people to read it because you put your heart and soul into a thing, and if everyone's like, "Oh, this sucks," then I put my heart and soul into it. So
Yeah.
that's a fear. But then the worst fear is that nobody would read it. So you're
Yeah.
afraid that people will read it, and you're afraid that people won't read it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So another like pin here. I want to come back to that point where there's a potential of no one reading it, and there's a potential
Yeah.
of people saying they don't like it. But what I really liked what you're saying earlier about getting onto your next novel, your next piece of art, it may not be as good. And sometimes I have actually done stuff that isn't good or as good as my first piece because I'm like, whoa, that was great. Let's do it again. And I
Yeah.
spend like a 20th of the time or 20% of the time that I did on the first one. And I expect it to be all so good because I'm now
Yeah.
so good at this. And then it just flops. And I'm like, oh, I still need to actually do the work. And some musicians like produce an amazing album and then they feel so much pressure. I guess anyone,
Yeah.
but I've heard of some musicians doing this and they just haven't produced anything for like 20 years because they're like,
Yeah.
that one was so good, and I can't top that. Whereas other artists, they're just like cranking out stuff, like Taylor Swift. Like, I flipping love this lady. Her latest album, I think people did not like it so much, but I'm like, she released 20 songs or 30 songs. I don't know, a lot of songs while she's doing a tour. I don't know. She's just making stuff. And like, the more you make, the better you get. Sometimes you find something, sometimes you don't. Like,
I think that there's a good lesson there with volume, with a lot of people kind of make one thing, and like right now I'm writing multiple books at the same time. Now I dedicate different amounts of time to each one, but I'm fostering all of these ideas, and I think that it's important to keep creating. Just keep creating, because if you make a piece of art, it doesn't matter what it is. If it's a song, if it's a book, if it's like a physical piece of art, you can't ride all your success on that one thing. You need to make more, make as much as you can without compromising the quality of what you're doing, and then hopefully you get faster at it in the future. But I agree with the idea of putting the work in as well.
Yeah. Okay. So now let's go back to, you've published it. You're fearful that people are going to say bad stuff about it. And then the big fear is that nobody will read it. Yes. This is where marketing comes in, right? Like, how much do you believe in what you've created? And I think as, I don't know, modern creators, maybe just creators, we have this sense that I've created it, people will come. I haven't told a single person, but somebody's going to come knocking at my door. They're going to be some famous guy or lady, and they're going to be like, so what you been working on? Here's my book. Let me read it quickly while I'm standing here. And let me,
what is the thing with the check, where the guy just shows up at your house with a check? You know what I'm talking about? It's a sweepstakes thingy. It's
but like, same kind of a thing. Like, it's such like fantastical thinking, such like imaginative, far out there thinking. And it's like, but what if it is actually the most amazing book in the world and you haven't told anyone? Like, how have you gone about marketing Mortal Tether? Like, your stuff's like ranked on top lists. You've got a lot of books out there. You're teaching other people how to do stuff. Like how have you gone about marketing a book? Which in my mind is it's bizarre to market a book. I feel like I can better market a company than a book. So can you talk us through marketing a book, what you've thought about, what you've struggled with, things like that?
Yeah. I guess I want to first say that I think that you're right about, it's not necessarily the quality of the book. I mean, the quality of the book needs to be there, right? Like, it needs to be a good story that people are going to essentially want to tell their friends about. And I can liken it back to, like, I was an indie musician for a long time, and I knew indie songwriters that were just incredible, that wrote like beautiful songs that would like tear your heart to pieces, like gorgeous. And they're like hidden gems, right? Because they're not in the mainstream. They didn't have like, access to millions of people or anything. But when you found one of these, it was like a treasure, these songs. So I feel like books are the same way. There's so many brilliant books out there that just don't get enough visibility. But I feel that at least right now, authors are in a position where we can get our books out there by ourselves without needing a publishing company. Like, in the same way that the internet has dissolved gatekeeping for the record industry, the publishing industry is that way as well. You can self-publish your books. I self-published Mortal Tether. I did it without a publisher. I made my own publishing. I did it through Electrofox. And so then the challenge becomes marketing. Yeah. I've seen a lot of authors say, like, if they didn't get a certain amount of sales in the first week, that their book was a flop. They use the word flop, which is like ridiculous to me, because it's not a movie. It doesn't need to make back a certain amount of money, like in a box office, before its theater run is out. And even that's changing now. So it's different. A book is a long game. You are reaching readers. You don't have to reach them in the first month. It's a good idea to try to reach as many as you can in the first year, because algorithms, and there's even like timing with 3 months and whatever. But the point is that you can have a book that you wrote 3 years ago become a success now because it's still new to people now if they didn't know about it.
Oof, that's
So,
so good. It's
yeah.
still new to people,
Yeah.
even though it's old to you.
Yeah.
Whoa, I
So
love that.
you're not existing on the same timeline as everyone else. And I think that a lot of people, a lot of artists out, even outside of authors, put a lot of pressure on themselves to, I need to be successful right now. I put this thing out yesterday. Nobody's talking about it. I'm a failure. Like, that's ridiculous. It's a long game. And, you know, you and I talked about this before, but I really believe if you make a piece of art, you should love it so much that you are willing to scream about it on a street corner for years. I love Moral Tether. I think I did a really good job. I think that this book will resonate with people, that people will find themes in it that they resonate with. It's entertaining, it's fun, and I think people should read it. And I will literally say that for years. Like, I won't shut up about it. So I think that's another thing too. Like,
It's
even
also,
when I make the next book, you know.
yeah. Do you think that like the amount of time it took to write a book is like somehow correlates to the amount of time you take to market it? So like I could create a piece of, like I could create a piece of art in an afternoon or an hour or something. Like, I don't necessarily think I would market it for a year.
Yeah.
I'd be like, I'm getting on to the next thing. And even I want to ask about, like, you mentioned you're writing several books. Like, how long do you spend marketing, or are you marketing and writing the next book? And how do you balance all of that? In my mind, I'm like, oh, I need to do like one thing at a time for it to like really work well. Like, I try to multitask or do several things at the same time. And when that happens, it most often doesn't happen.
Well, you can't. These two things are not directly equated. Like, for example, you making one piece of art, and it has taken you years of cultivating your craft in order to be able to make that piece of art in a day. So it's not like you just slapped some paint on a thing and you've never painted before. You've developed that skill. So I don't think the time is necessarily something that should be a part of this equation. But you say that like you wouldn't promote something past a certain amount of time, but I've seen you do it. You don't promote necessarily one piece of art, but you promote a universe that you made. You made a
Yes.
universe and characters that appear like over and over again in different. So, and you've been doing that for a long time. So no, it's not necessarily one picture, but you can't think of it as one picture. You have to think of it as a broader scope. So like, yes, it took me years to write this. I mean, because I failed on the first book, and well, it may come back. We'll just say that. But I put a lot of work into something that ultimately never went public. And then I put a lot of work into this. Editing this was the hardest part of writing it. So as I mature, hopefully I get better at editing. But I think that, this is also going to be part of a world, So I'm writing book 2 for Moral Tether right now. So yes, I'll be talking about it for years, because as I write book 2 and then potentially a book 3, it becomes a series. So like your universe, where you talk about your universe for a long time, this is just a different universe. Yours is a universe that people physically see. Mine is one that they build in their imagination when they interact with the words. But it's the same thing.
Well, I often think about like modern books. One of my favorite books that I've read is called The Game is Life. I think it's by Terry Scott, something like that. And there might be even more books now, but I think I read about 10, but they're pretty short. But I was like, it's really frustrating when I'm reading them, like, and he's writing them. I have to stop and then wait for it. But
Yeah.
as a marketing thing, it's like, hey, I wrote this little bit, people loved it. Now I'm writing more. And as a marketing thing, it's like you get to speak about this one book a lot, because it's like broken down into smaller books. Like, there's so many marketing opportunities because there are so many pieces. Just like in a collection of art, if you're doing one at a time, you get to speak about one at a time, which then relates to the collection as a whole. You get to show work in progress. You get to like go deep into one particular artwork. And I find like if you were to produce like 100 artworks and then be like, hi guys, I'm here, they're all there. It's like, that's like one event, unless it's like a Steve Jobs at an Apple event kind of a thing, where there's thousands of people there and the whole world is watching. Like, to break it up and be like one at a time, and then everyone relates to this bigger overarching thing. It's such a good idea. So how does that relate to Mortal Tether now? I know that's like part of a series.
Yeah, there's actually a problem with it for books. And the problem is that because a book takes such a long time to make, and then there's
Yeah.
like silence in between before the next thing, like people forget about you. So what you're
Yeah.
talking about is actually and definitely an advantage to, doing it how you're doing it, is that you can stay in people's consciousness over and over again. And then you also have the flexibility to take a break and then come back. Like, but your break doesn't have to necessarily be that long. But with something like Mortal Tether or any book that's a series where it's not a rapid release, there is a strategy in publishing called rapid release, where you write 3 books and then you separate them just by a couple months. So that way you capitalize on the speed. And some writers can write like that. Maybe I will in the future. We'll have to see. But as I said, like, I'm working on a bunch of things at the same time. If I had the situation where I could write 3 books and wait and then release them all like in a coordinated effort, then that makes me very excited. That's fun. But
would you ever like finish a book and be like, okay, I'm going to put it on the shelf, I'm going to work on its like
that's
sequel?
what I did with my first book. I mean, it's written. It has a beginning, a middle, and end. It's a huge journey. It needs to be edited, but like it needs to be edited a lot. And so it's on the shelf for now, but that could be released in the future. It could even be broken up into 2 books and released. I mean, it's long.
But I mean,
see, here's the thing. The reason why I wouldn't do that is because I believe in plot structure, that each book should be self-contained and exciting. Okay. And so I wouldn't just cut it in half, but there's enough content there.
But I mean, if you could like write 3 self-contained books and then release them in rapid fire, would that be a viable kind of strategy? Or would you just be like, I finished one, I need to get it out now?
Yeah.
Or do you think you could patiently wait until you finish 3?
It depends on the person, and it depends on your situation. Like, I might do that like under the radar and like still release books like once every year, but then just have like these books that I do rapid release, or maybe even something, shorter novellas or children's books, something like that, that were easier to do, in a series. But for me right now, because I'm working on the second book, I'm actually also writing other content that I haven't put it out yet, but I'm doing it to put in my newsletter. That is an expansion of the world. So like these mini stories that if you liked Mortal Tether and you wanted to follow a different character and see what they were doing in another part of the timeline or another area, then you would that way I don't have to commit to like releasing a whole book right now, but also people are getting fresh content that has to do with expanding the world without waiting for the second book. So it's just like, because people who subscribe to my newsletter, I will shout it over and over again. Your newsletter subscribers are your most important people. You should take such good care of them. You should give them like giveaways and first access to things. And in my case, like it's time for me to get ARC readers, which are advanced readers who get a copy of the ebook before it's published. Like those people will be people who are on my newsletter list, because those are the people who care. They care.
Okay, so like I love this, because I always assumed like, sheesh, if you're an author who maybe has a good cadence of 1 book a year, like how many like newsletters do you send every year? Like, is it 1, or is it like like the month before and after that one thing? Like how do you do that? Like as an artist who can produce like an item a day, I could be like, hey guys, I got something to show you every day.
Well, this is another thing. Like, I don't think that artists of any medium should only send newsletters when they want to sell something. Like, don't do that. Don't do that to people. You want to create a relationship with people. You want to, make it fun for them to be there. Like, give them value.
So
like,
good.
Show them things that you're doing in your life. Like, invite them to be part of your journey. Like, it doesn't all have to be like, buy my thing, I mean, of course, you want people to purchase the art that you make, so that way you can afford to make more art. Yes, that is the thing. However, it shouldn't be your only thing. Like, make a community. Like, yes.
Well, I think like in terms of books, like so one of my favorite is Dune, and I think I finished it this year. I finished all 6 books, and the first book I read as like a single book. And at the end of it, there was just like a whole lot of like endnotes or appendixes or appendices. And I loved it. I was like, oh, wow, this is cool. And I could imagine that being something that you could send every week for like a whole year to your audience, you know, like here's the next little bit of this appendix, here's the next bit, and it's only for people who are on the newsletter. And I think in the Harry Potter world, like there's so many things that you could add in there. Like in your book, I'm like, how did this thing start?
Yes,
like
that's
what
just a
happened?
newsletter. Yeah,
it is, and I'm just like, oh, like please
well,
tell
it will
me.
be. I've written it. Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's really, really cool. And I've been, you know, talking to artists, NFT artists about marketing, and there's a lot of people who don't speak English. They don't want to be on camera. They don't want to, you know, speak like this or be on a podcast. And I'm like, you just talk about it with writing, like talk about it in your own language, talk about it with Google Translate or ChatGPT's help. Like just tell people about stuff. Like even if you're writing, like every chapter, like you've got a personal struggle that you've gone through about writing this thing. Like, what have you learned? Like, who is this character? Like, let's talk about good and evil. Like, what have you learned? I can imagine you're learning so much about writing and people and personalities and humans and characteristics while you're writing. Like, can we just like understand what's going on in your mind, not just like the end product?
I think that I wonder, and this is something that was so fascinating. I recently read a book called Newsletter Ninja, and it's all about author newsletters. And a lot of it, I like exposing myself to different points of view of things, but not necessarily taking all the advice. Like we were talking about earlier before we started the stream, you know, that you should get info from many different sources and then make up your own mind. And in this instance is make up your own plan. But one of the things that she said in the book that I really loved is she said, you are not your target audience. And I thought that was great. You're the person that makes the thing. And then the person that likes the thing might be a totally different type of person than you. I mean, not that you can't be besties or like friends or anything. I mean, of course you can, but they might like different things than you, especially if you're someone that doesn't necessarily subscribe to newsletters, you subscribe to different types of newsletters. Like maybe I subscribe to a lot of technical newsletters or nonfiction, but not necessarily follow many fiction author newsletters. So I actually do follow some fiction author newsletters, but I think that constantly thinking when you're creating content, what do my readers or my fans, if you're an artist, what do they want and how can I give it to them? And that's the important thing. You know, like I want to make them happy. How do I do that? So that's what you should ask yourself. And so when you create content, you think about that.
Have you ever jumped on a call with someone from your newsletter just to be like, what do you want? Like
no, but at the end of my newsletter, I say, if there's something that you want to see here, please contact me. And so I've got a contact. Yeah.
And people do, and people are like,
no,
I want this.
So far, people have just been like, just happy with what I've been doing. So I'm glad of that. But no feedback yet, but I'm waiting.
Man, I reply to newsletters that I love. I'm like, because I know that I love getting replies to my newsletters, and sometimes I'm like, hey, how are you guys doing? Or how are you doing? Like, tell me what you're working on.
That actually and sometimes helps with deliverability. When you reply to somebody's newsletter, then it helps make sure that more people get the newsletters in the inbox. So I just did the other day. I responded to an author newsletter because he had a sale. See how excited I get when I say sale? For books, a book sale, 3 books for like $2.98. 3 books. Wow. So that's I messaged him. I was like, thank you. I got all 3 of your books.
Somewhere in me, I'm like, one, that's great. Yeah. But as somebody who's like selling stuff, I'm like, why couldn't you be the awesome person who like bought my books at like $10 a piece? Then I would have got $30.
Right. Well,
hey, if you put out a sale,
so many books, so little budget. But you buy the books and then you get it. But see, the thing is, like, the books that I bought are technical books. They are, specifically for authors helping authors. So if I read these books and like them, I will tell other authors about them. So I did get them on sale. But see, the thing is that I do this. This is great. So I recently gave away 3,000 books for free to people. So it was 3,117 books over the
Wow.
course of 5 days. So yeah, I'm the type of person that I want readers. Like, you know, if he had put up his books for free, I would have downloaded them. But I saw that, you know, he did a bundle deal, so I wanted all 3 of them, and they're normally $2.99 a piece, so they're not like that expensive normally. So basically, you
Okay.
just got, you know, you guys got extra books, you know, for the
Yeah.
cost of really one. But I do believe in reaching readers, especially if you're a new author. Like for me, this being my first book, like of course I want to sell books and I have sold books, but it's important for me to reach people. So I've done 2 campaigns so far of free book giveaways where I tried to on Amazon give away as many as possible. And the first one that I did, you know, it was a combination of Kindle Unlimited and downloads. So ultimately, it worked out to about 3,000 copies total, but the downloads were actually like 2,900 and something, like just under. So I was like, for the second promo, I want to beat 3,000 books. So
Amazing.
I did a big campaign, did it. So now that's over 6,000 books total that I've given away for free. Like, yeah, it's because I want people to read my book. I know that if they read this book and love it, they're going to read the second book and they're going to read the third book. And
Well, it's about like long term, right? It's like
yeah, it's
I've
a long game.
got more books in me. Like follow
Yeah.
me as the author, and also tell your friends. Like
Yeah.
if it's good,
Yes.
like word of mouth it, please. Like this is
Yes.
a very good version of a word of mouth strategy.
It really works. And actually, I've had people who got my book for free who bought it for themselves. They bought it for other people because they
Oh,
liked
that's
it.
cool.
They're like, and actually, I had 2 really amazing things. One of them was when I gave my book to my ARC readers. So before, like, you know, before I had really like pushed it out there, I had a couple ARC readers say that they were going to buy it as Christmas gifts because I released it in October. So
Okay.
and it's geared toward teenagers. So one of them bought it for their little sister. I think one of them bought it for their teenage child. So that's something that's really incredible of the idea of, and I'm sure you can relate to this as well, in a different way, but the idea of someone opening a gift on Christmas Day and it being something you made.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Like, that's just the coolest thing. And I think about like the socks that you made and like the hoodies and stuff, and like that's a thing, you know, like someone could open it and be like, oh my gosh, this is
That is pretty
TapTapKaboom
cool,
hoodie.
right? It's
Yeah, it's
like
wicked.
I always think about Christmas stuff like way too close to Christmas, and like, it would have been
No,
cool if I could, like, if I could sell stuff in like November or October and then have people buy it for Christmas. That would be great. But I'm like, oh, I have a great Christmas idea. 10th of December.
I didn't think about it like that. I mean, like I think about Christmas, but it's just because I really love Christmas. I'm like one of those
Yeah.
weird people. Like I read Christmas books in July, like
Oh.
Christmas romance. I can't help
That's
it.
that's cool, man.
Yeah.
I didn't know there was a Christmas romance genre, but
There is. Oh my gosh, it's so they're so sweet. It's like they're adorable. So like I mean, I'll read books that are really heavy, that have like super heavy themes, you know, dystopian, dark, apocalyptic. You know, one of my favorite books is Scythe, which is literally about humanity has solved all of humanity's problems except death. I mean, like some dark things, you know. But but I love these books. But at the same time, sometimes you just want to unplug with a Christmas romance where nothing is blowing up, where the people are going to live happily ever after, where everything is nice, you know, like sometimes like you need to have a nice story. It's like Hallmark, but in a book, you know.
I
It's
get,
just nice.
yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
Man, that's super
It
cool.
can't be blowing up, you know, death and destruction all the time. Sometimes you got to unplug.
I listened to a really cool one on Audible. I can't remember what it was called, but it was like voice acting or stage production. So there wasn't like a he said, she said this, but they were just different voices. And just like a trip on a bus. It was like a romantic a guy and a girl meet
Oh,
each
that
other on a
sounds
bus, fall in love on this like 4-hour journey, sound effects, etc. But it's just like, yeah, it's a really
Sweet.
nice way to like just unwind. It's don't have to like get to the end of the chapter or whatever. But now I want to ask you, have you always been a writer or an author? Because when I met you, you were an artist leading MetaPep, which is this like Web3 company, and you had these MetaPep Mondays, Tuesdays.
Monday.
You had these Mondays, you had these drops of like 50 pieces. I worked on a drop for you guys, then we did a Snowy's collection together, and I'm like, whoa.
And the
like,
Cogito Mortis.
Yeah, like, but now you're super into books. And I'm like, but has this always been? I assume so, because when we first met, you and Chris were like the first people who talked about like Lord of the Rings. And we're like, yeah, we love Lord of the Rings. And I'm like, oh, my people.
Yeah.
Like, let's chat. I like you guys already, you know.
I will go to Mordor with you, into the very fires of Mordor. So no, I wasn't always an author. In fact, I started writing my first book in like 2016. And before that, I actually did not believe that I could write a book. And it was so I stopped using Facebook for like 10 years. And I logged back into my Facebook after like a decade. And I read this old post that I wrote because I was a musician, like a songwriter, lyrics and composition. And somebody who liked my music said, oh, I think you should write a book. You know, because a lot of songwriting is storytelling. So I've always been a storyteller, but just through a different medium. You storytell through songs, you storytell through art, and you storytell through books. So it was just an evolution for me. So I've been a storyteller, but not a writer. And in that 10-year-old Facebook comment, I said, I could never write a book. That's a quote. I said I could never write a book. How ridiculous is that? I've written 2 complete books and now many partial books. So, I mean, I can absolutely write a book, but I just didn't believe in myself. So
I think that's a great title for a book about helping other authors.
I could never write a book.
Yeah. That's great. Well, okay. So 2016, that's when you started authoring or writing, believing that you were an author. But you were also a musician before that. Like, is there anything before that? Because they all have like storytelling aspects to it. And I know that Julia Donaldson, who's the Gruffalo author, she was a songwriter before she started writing children's books.
Oh, yeah.
And her stuff's very, very easy to read. It's got lovely rhythm and rhyme, and it's lovely. So it was singer-songwriter your first gig or your first career, or like how many times have you reinvented yourself? And what is this process like of reinventing yourself? Can you dive back into your past, please? Because like 10 years ago, 20 years ago, I don't know, like at an event, like you would introduce yourself differently, right? You'd be like,
I'm a musician. That's what I would say. No, but and before that, so I actually studied biology in college. I have a degree, a bachelor's in biology. And so
that's amazing. I love it.
So, you know, science nerd, STEM classes, like, you know, and that still stayed with me. Like, I'm still a science nerd. I'm just a science nerd in a different way. You know, I wrote.
Well, I think you're just like
fiction.
You're just like inherently curious about everything. Ton of stuff.
Yeah. So I think that the thing that is difficult for people, and why when you ask me that first question of like when somebody comes up to a party, what are you going to say that you are? It's because people like to pigeonhole each other into one thing. I am one thing. I am an artist, or I am an author, or I am an engineer, or I'm a biologist, or whatever it is, or I own a Web3 company. Like whatever it is, like people want to just understand people in black and white. And like we talked about before, life is not like that at all. Life is gray. You can be many things. And like, you know, even we say what your job is doesn't necessarily define you. And I think that is right. But when you're somebody like me, who's an entrepreneur, maybe that's what I am, an entrepreneur, because I do a lot of different things. Like I just, you know, want to be creative, make things, and then help other people be creative and make things, you know? So I guess if you boil it down, it's like that. But
if you could just see my whiteboard right now, it pretty much just says that exactly.
I love that.
Yeah.
We're a good team.
Yeah. I'm like, yes, Candice, please carry on speaking. I love this. Maybe that's why we get along so well. I love it.
We do. Like people don't know, but we actually talked for like 30 minutes before this, and the time flew by because we're just chatting about movies and like all kinds of stuff. Yeah, so I think that, you know, my evolution was not just one, and I don't think anybody's evolution is just one trajectory. I was this and then this and then this. There's no clean cutoff. In fact, I still do things like, obviously I'm co-founder of Metapop, like I'm an author who writes books for teenagers, but I also am half owner of a Web3 company. And we do blockchain solutions. And actually, we just, very exciting news, we applied for Codebase today. So
What does that even mean? Like,
oh, it's Avalanche's incubator for like
cool.
early stage products. Yeah. So
Amazing.
yeah, it's exciting. So we have this what I think is a amazing revolutionary idea that can really help people if we bring it to fruition. So fingers crossed. If you fingers crossed for us, hopefully we get through. Oh,
okay. So can we quickly like dive? No, I was going to say, can we quickly dive into how you do all of these things? Like,
sure.
how do you do productivity? How do you do time management?
Yes,
But so you could go down this route, or you could also tell us what kind of music you sang to whom, because this is also very interesting, and this is like more staying on the path that we were. Your choice. This is like a play your own game, role-playing adventure book now.
Let's do both. I started out with, and this is going to get back into the time management, I promise. So I started out with doing folk music in English, and actually it was incredible. I got to tour, I got to do original songs, I got to open for some really amazing people. I had to open for the lead singer of Rusted Root, Michael Glubicki, and I got to also open for Roger McGuinn, who's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the lead singer of the Byrds. So it was wild. It was an amazing time. And then over time, I actually, and you were talking about this earlier because you've been listening to French music. Well, I started learning Mandarin, and one thing that I've employed, like a way that I learn languages, is by listening to music, because it's an easy way to understand how things are said, often in a little bit of a poetic way. You have to just accept that. But like watching movies and listening to music in a foreign language really do help you progress with that language. So I was just listening to music in Mandarin, and I loved it. Like, as a songwriter, like, it was just the most beautiful thing. The idea of, it's a tonal language, so it is musical in itself with the 5 tones. And it just, so even spoken Chinese is like music to me. But then listening to Chinese music, understanding how the music has to follow the natural rhythm of speech. Like, they have a roadmap, essentially, because if you put a different melody to a different text, it can mean a different thing. It's so
crazy.
fascinating. It is the coolest, and it's so beautiful too, the way you listen to it. And there's so many incredibly talented Chinese artists. So I just loved it. I fell in love with it, and I was enrolled in a class, and I had the best professor ever. Just such a great teacher. And he actually, after the class was done, I was 10 years older than everybody else in the class. He invited me to come to his house and like meet his wife, because their kids had been grown up and moved away, and his wife didn't speak any English. So he's like, if you want to practice your Chinese, come to my house and like meet my wife. So I would go over and just hang out with her. We'd play ping pong in the basement. She'd teach me how to cook, and like we'd visit together, and just, we made a friendship. Like, we became friends. It was so cool. It was so cool. Just kind, amazing people, just brilliant. So anyway, I told my professor, I'm like, I wrote a Chinese song. And he's like, what? Anyway, so I showed it to him, and it was, the first one I did was like a children's song. You know, it was about, I had a pet fish. It was about my pet fish. I'm not going to sing it to you. I will never sing it to anybody, because it's you know, it is what it is. But you got to start somewhere. So I made this little song, and then from there, because I was already a songwriter and I had all of this music and I would play guitar, and so I started writing more sophisticated songs, and I kept doing it. And I kept writing Chinese songs, like my own, like making lyrics, like and like some things didn't make sense, you know, like
sure,
it happens, you know. But like, as I got better, my songs got better. And then one day, I had a friend, we were in an airport, and they asked me what kind of music I was listening to. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry, you're not going to know any of the artists that I listen to now, because I was only listening to Chinese music at that point because I was like deep in, and so they're like, oh, try me, and I'm like, Wang Li Home, Jay Chou, like they're like, no. Teresa Tong, I mean, like the great artists, they're just amazing artists. And so I sang a little bit of Chinese music to her, like sitting on the bench, like waiting for the cab. And she said, I think you should put a video of you doing this on the internet. And I'm like, no, nobody's going to want to see that. And so, but then she put the bug in my ear and I was thinking about it and I was like, okay, well, let me just Google. I just Googled Chinese version of YouTube. And then this is many years ago. This is like 2011, 2012. This is a long time.
Oh, wow. Like YouTube had been out, what, like 2 or 3 years by then?
Yeah, it came out in like 2006, 2007. So I actually had videos on YouTube back in 2007, like early. Yeah. So so I was like, so I had already been putting music on the internet. So I was like, oh, let me just give it a go. Let me just upload one of these videos of me singing a Chinese song. So I picked a Chinese song that I really liked and I just recorded myself singing it with my guitar and I put it on the thing. And then I just kind of like forgot about it. I'm like, I did it. I love this song and I sang it and I just put it out there. And then I have a friend who was also at that same college. I just went to part-time. It was like a 3 days a week or something. And my friend worked at the college and he was from Hong Kong but he wasn't in my class. Like, we're just friends. And he messaged me and was like, hey, you're on the homepage of Yoku, which is that website. I'm like, what? No. No, I'm not. He's like, yeah, no, check it. So I'm like, all right. So I look at it. There's my video. It's got like 190,000 views at that point or something.
Wow, that's crazy.
It was crazy. So I was like, okay, wow, this is wild. It was wild. So I was like, I did it again. I put another video up and then I did it again. And then somebody from that company contacted me and was like, hey, like, can you do more of these? And I was like, sure. So I just kept doing it. And then, anyway, so I sang Chinese music. That's a long story short. Now, time management. We're going to get back into this. So how do you tackle many different projects at the same time? I think it is really important to prioritize the length of time that something takes to get done. If you have a team, delegating those tasks, and also prioritizing deadlines. So, and this is something that people don't normally do, give yourself more time than you think you need. Yes, more time than you think you need, because stuff happens, stuff arises, so I think that once I got to the point where they were asking me for, music, and I was putting music up on their platform, that point was difficult, because I wasn't great in Chinese. I was like, not good. But I loved it though so much, and I was trying my hardest, and I thought the music was beautiful. I thought this music was beautiful, and I wanted to sing it. I would sing it in the shower, I would sing it in the kitchen, I would sing it in my car, like driving down the road. Just I was obsessed. Like, I just loved it. It was so beautiful, just such a cool sound. And so I was like, okay, well, they want this stuff from me, so I've got to prioritize. So I said, all right, well, I've got this music that's already recorded in English that I also produce music as well. So so I could take the vocal out, and then I could just re-record the vocal with Chinese lyrics. So I was like, okay, well, how can I transform the song? Now, that is why it's important that we mentioned earlier that the melody is dependent on what you're saying shapes the melody. So then I had to kind of reverse engineer it. This is how the melody goes. This is what I want to say. I need to make those two things jive. So so sometimes getting things done means relying on your existing toolbox. Don't just say I have to do everything from scratch. You can say, all right, well, I've built this thing. I need to do this. Will this thing in my existing toolbox allow me to get to point B or point C easier? So you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. Always consider your skills and what you have, and see, I've tied those two things together.
Yeah. It's so it's not just starting from scratch. You have a very big base on which to, or a base on which to build on.
Build. Yeah.
I've often told people like who are trying to figure out like what they should do next. It's like, unless you're like super clear on what you want to do, like go for something that you can build on top of. So like if you've never done graphic design, do graphic design, you know, like it's going to be a skill that you're going to learn a lot from. If you've never done any kind of storytelling or writing, do that, because you can always write. You can always tell stories. Like it helps a lot.
And stay organized. That is like, that's important. Yeah. Because
like what does that even mean for you? Like stay organized, like
use tools that make your life better. Like don't be afraid. Don't feel like you need to just do things like how other people might expect you to do it. Like, for example, if it was accepted practice to say you can only write a great book if you use a paper and pen and you don't use a laptop because you don't want to get distractions or whatever. I mean, that's valid. That is a valid way to write a book for many people. I think I forget who it is. It'll come to me, but people write books like that. It's totally valid. However, if there is a tool that is good for you, like works with your brain, that allows you to stay organized to write your book, use the tool, don't be afraid to go backwards a step to take 10 steps forward. For example, when I started writing my first book, I started in Microsoft Word because that's the only thing I knew. I didn't really know how far I was going to get writing the book. I just opened up a Word document and I started writing. And then as time went on, as it became bigger, a couple of chapters in, I was like, wow, this is really overwhelming because I wanted to go back and change something and I couldn't find it easily. Yeah. And so my husband, Chris, we made MetaPep Labs together. We're both a blend of two things. The blend is creative and analytical. Like, that's why I had the science background, but then I became a musician. Like, two things can exist in one person. So we're different ratios of it. He is more analytical than creative. I'm more creative than analytical, but the two of us work very well together because we're both, and like we're a balance of both. So we can ping ideas back and forth between each other. So when I came to him with this problem, I said, I'm starting to write this novel, but I'm having difficulty because it's like a whole wall of text that it's very difficult to sift through. He said, well, why don't you research different tools for writers writing books and see if there's something that can help you? And I'm like, you know what? That's a great idea. So I went and I researched all these tools, and then you can try even free demos of them. And I found one that I love that helped me separate chapters, not only separate into chapters, but separate into scenes. So I can easily go back and say, oh, I think that this scene should have been changed. Now I don't have to go through a wall of text or Control F and hope that I remember a word that I used. I can just go and literally find the scene. It also lets you create character cards. And now that I'm doing heavy structuring with plot using the Save the Cat film method, now I can literally say, I want this beat to happen around these pages. I mean, and then it will help me track where I am in my progress. So, I mean, it's brilliant. So use tools. Don't be afraid to use tool. And and if a tool's not working, like Microsoft Word was not working for me, you find something else that will help you. Like, you don't have to do it all on your own. Make it easy for yourself because you're going to be doing a lot of work. So you want your energy to be as productive as possible. And in order to do that, you need to just, give yourself an advantage, and don't be afraid to ask for help either. Like, for example, I was looking at the thing and it wasn't immediately, I was so deep into the book, it wasn't immediately apparent to me like, oh, I should get a tool for it. I thought people wrote in Microsoft Word. This was like, maybe there's a tool. Yes, there's a tool. So ask for help, and
that's so good.
Make it easy on yourself.
So it's got like 5 minutes left of the official show. Yeah. There are people who have these dreams of what they want to do, what they want to become. Perhaps they haven't taken a step towards their dream in years. Like, what would you say to somebody who has a dream and who expresses and who tells you about their dream and then says, but I haven't done anything in 10 years or 20 years or like forever. I just have this idea. Like, what do you say to them?
I will say, and I'm going to try not to get emotional when I say it, that my grandmother published her first book when she was 86.
Whoa. Yeah. That's crazy.
Because she passed away this year, but first book.
That's lovely.
Incredible. So yeah, no, as long as you have a breath
Wow.
in your body, if you have a dream, freaking go for it. Life is short. It is so short, and we waste a lot of time doing stupid things. I mean, I don't mean to say stupid things, but they are like things that things that add no value to our lives. Like sometimes you may be doom scrolling the internet, reading things that make you feel bad,
Yeah.
things that just make you like fearful or angry or twisted up inside. And I'm not saying that it's not important to educate yourself about things that are happening. Yes, it is important to educate yourself about things that are happening, but there becomes a point when you do it that and it's actually harming you in your soul and in your mind. And I think that at a certain point you need to step away and say, how can I make the world better? How can I make the world better myself? Not just consuming content, reading things, but what can I make? What can I make to do something that's good? And then once you get into that mindset of I'm not only a content consumer, but I am a person who creates, then you can say, all right, I can follow my dream, because this time that I spent consuming these things that didn't actually make me better or make the world better, if it didn't do either of those two things, now I'm gonna take that time that I had previously spent doing those things. I'm not going to doom scroll essentially, and I'm going to instead take action. And that action can be making your life better for yourself. It can make your life better for your family, for your community. Like it depends on what your dream is, but
Yeah.
if you have a dream, you absolutely have to go for it. I mean, we got this one life. And also, don't put pressure on yourself to be successful right away. Give yourself time. Everything worth doing takes time. I say that my grandmother, wrote this book much later in life, but the things that she had in the book are things that were the culmination of decades of experience before. Like
Yeah.
she had volunteered 11 years in hospice as a volunteer.
Wow.
As a volunteer, she volunteered helping disabled children. So all of those experiences in her life were poured into this book. So could she have
Wow.
written the book at 60? No, because she was still doing those things. So
Yeah.
so cut yourself a break. Things happen, in different times. And if you want to be a musician and you're 57, be a musician. You are going to be writing different music now than you would have written when you were 17. So
Yeah.
and there's an audience for everything. I was afraid that people wouldn't like my book, but that was such an unfounded fear, because there is an audience for everything. If you just put some time into your craft and just write something that that you put effort into, like your best shot, then somebody out there will resonate with it. It's like making a friend, right? Because so if someone's like, oh, I have no friends, no, you need to find the people who will be your friends, because there are people out there
Yeah.
who will like you, who will resonate with you, and they exist. Now the challenge is finding them. So first, I would say, if you're starting from scratch, make the thing, then make the thing again, and then make the thing again, because you'll get better as you make the thing. And then from there, put the thing out there. That's the scary part. Just put the thing out there. If people don't like it, that's okay. Put another thing out there and just keep doing it, and just don't give up on your dream. As long as you have a breath in your body, just do it.
Man, that's so good. I mean, there's an author, the author of Eat, Pray, Love, Elizabeth, somebody, Liz, I can't remember now. But she has this chapter about eating the shit sandwich, and it's like whatever you want to do, like you got to be totally okay and in love with eating the shit sandwich, which means like doing the worst of the worst part of
Yeah.
of that. Like even if you're writing and it's not going well, like you still enjoy it.
Yeah. Don't
And
be
I'm
afraid
like,
to suck.
yeah. And it's
Yeah.
like if you don't reach your version of success, like if you enjoy just doing it, like the actual process of it, like do it. Like that for me is like one of the biggest like hallmarks of the thing that you're allowing yourself to do. Like if you want to be a kite surfer or a yoga instructor or travel the world, surf photographer, writer, artist, whatever, like just do it badly. Like if you're smiling, like you already impact the people around you just because like your soul lights up, and if
Yeah.
it's like the stuff that you don't enjoy doing but you still enjoy it, like man, it's so good.
Yeah. And don't let other people put you down for your dream either. Like if you want to be a yoga instructor, be a yoga instructor, or if you want to be a kite surfer, be a kite surfer, or anything, you know, like not everybody will respect your dream, but I feel like uh you owe it to yourself to go for the thing that you love, and then to ultimately be good at it. And you don't need to make your dream your career. Like I think a lot of
No,
people think that
yeah,
there is a little, as someone who has made her dream a career many times, there is a benefit to doing a dream that is, you know, that doesn't have the pressure of needing a financial incentive, you know, um,
yeah,
and a freedom with that too, because then you can make the things that you like, you know, as opposed to things that will sell. So, you know, but if you are lucky enough to get to the point where you can do the thing that you love as you love it, and then make that your career, then you know that may happen for you, but you don't need to make it your goal out of the gate.
yeah. Again, like the lady, her name is Liz Gilbert or Elizabeth Gilbert. She talks about this idea of not putting pressure on your dream to
Mm.
provide for you. It's like
Yeah.
you're going to kill it. You're going to kill the thing that you love because you're putting so much pressure on it to provide for you. It's like
So
you provide for it. Like you take
yeah,
that job and then you make time to work on your dream.
yeah. I think that it depends on what the thing is as well. Like if you do graphic design, you know, you may end up doing graphic design for like corporations or companies or stuff. Like for example, like I did video editing as I was a musician. It's a skill that I learned from doing my own music videos, and then it just developed over a long time. You know, as I said, I
Yeah.
started putting up videos in 2007. So over time, I got better and better at using, you know, different software, you know, After Effects, FCPX, all those. And then over time, when I started doing books, I ended up making a business combining two of my skills to do a third thing that I love, which is making videos about books. Like authors need videos to market themselves. I make
So
videos
good.
and also love books. So I found this niche of where, wow, I get to read books for my job and then make videos about them. Like this is incredible, and like I get paid to do it. It's wild. So so sometimes your skills or your dream might not be the way that you think it is. Like you may have a skill that you could make money at and enjoy and have fun with, but it might not just, you know, it's not like, you know, I'm just making, you know, music videos or corporate videos, or I'm just, you know, doing book stuff. Like you can combine them and then, you know, potentially have a revenue stream to support yourself that allows you to do the other things that you love as well. So you can love
Yeah.
more than one thing and do more than one thing that you love.
Oh, it's so good. It
Like
reminds me of like,
blockchain as well. Just threw that in there. Like I love it. I think it's changing the world and I get to be a part of it. So yeah.
it reminds me of like, you know, when you're on holiday and you go up like the main street, like everybody's walking up the main street. Everybody's like on this high street, like that's where all the tourist attractions are. And then you veer off one side street. But unless you like carry on walking, like you're loving the city, like you're not gonna find like the fourth or the fifth like little side street that nobody's at. But like you have to walk the walk. So
Yeah.
sometimes you have to like do the stuff that everybody else is doing. You have to do the baby steps. You have to learn the ropes. You have to, you know, write your first book. You have to suck at marketing. You have to do a bunch of stuff, you
Yeah.
know, in order to find this maybe niche thing that you absolutely love, but you didn't know it was there
Right.
until you actually got there, until you like,
Yeah.
oh, there's a cool little side street. Well, let's go down it. And then you discover new things. And then, you know, I could continue with the analogy there, but you get the point, I think.
Yeah. That was a good analogy.
Well, look, our time has come to an end. I know that like we could carry on talking about so many things, so
Mhm.
there'll definitely be at least a version 2 of this conversation.
Oh,
Um,
I would love that. That sounds great.
so I'm going to put up your website here, CandiceJarrett.com.
That is me.
Guys, go have a look. There's a lot of stuff on there. Go order the book, join the newsletter. Even if you're just like, oh, how do you do an interesting newsletter? And if you are
I
looking
have a
for a
video about
very
that.
ready.
I do.
So guys, if you're artists, look at it. If you're creatives, look at it. So yeah, thank you so much, Candice, for your time, for your energy. I love it. Like honestly, Candice is one of the most I don't know how to say it, like energetic, passionate people. Like this one time she literally like researched one of the questions I had about a little toy dinosaur. And she was like, I can't find the answer, so I'm going to ask a paleontologist if they can help me. And they did.
Yeah.
And like, we should do a whole nother podcast just about that. But I'm just like, whoa, like that is incredible. So thank you so much for being on this episode. It has been great to have you.
Thanks for inviting me, Rich. I'd be happy to come back anytime. And everyone, please support him. Amazing artist, doing all this stuff. Like next time I'm coming on interviewing you.
All right. We'll try that out.
Sounds great. Great.
Okay, I'm gonna try and like stop this somewhere somehow. I'm just gonna press stop over here.